Okay, I got this off of Dutch Sense's channel, who got this off of SHEILALIEN's channel. Tornado touches down in Mobile, Alabama. Live broadcast, Christmas Day. Check it out.
There's clouds rotating, bubbling around back there. And look back here. There we are, folks.
Is that it then?
Yeah, it looks like there might be very well a tornado on the ground there. It's south, looking towards Brookley Field, looking down towards DIP. If you're in those areas, you need to be in shelter. That is a tornado on the ground.
That is a tornado on the ground.
There's a tornado.
Significant one.
Yeah, that is Mobile, folks. This is tornado. You can see debris flying as well.
Power flashes
popping
off there, yeah.
There is a tornado on the ground, folks. If you're listening to us, you're in Mobile County, you need to be in shelter at this point. South of Brookley Field, DIP, you need to be in shelter. There is a tornado on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Transformers blowing up. There is debris flying. That is in Mobile County.
Control room, stay with that on the Holiday Inn camera.
Yeah, if you could, keep swinging around on it. Michael, I'm going to leave you for just a second.
Okay.
I'm going to let you talk over this. I want to go get some information.
All right, thank you, Matt. Okay, now you're looking live off our Holiday Inn camera downtown Mobile. That is pointed towards the south. That is a tornado on the ground. This is a
Do you have any idea exactly where
for
that's
the Mobile Metro. The power flashes are transformers. Okay. That tornado is on the ground. You can see the power flashes constantly happening as that thing's moving from west to east. It's on a northeastward track. Stay with that control room if you can. This is the real deal. This is a live shot off the Holiday Inn camera downtown Mobile. That is a tornado. This is a tornado emergency for the Mobile Metro.
This is a large wedge.
Large, very large.
This is definitely a destructive tornado. That's Midtown area, so this is moving through town, folks. This is moving right through town. If you're watching us here in Mobile, you need to be taking shelter here at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is right now, we're staying with this as long as we can. Thank goodness we still have some sort of daylight left that we're able to capture this on the camera so that you can see this. But we're still looking off towards the south. And I'm trying to place locations here as best I can here in the city. I believe.
Well, we don't need to be worrying about locations. If you're in Mobile right now, you need to be taking shelter. Look at that. There goes a huge transformer.
Wow.
This is right here in the city of Mobile, folks, going through the Midtown area. This is a tornado, a wedge tornado on the ground in the Midtown area. So please, please be taking shelter right now. This is in our viewing area. Meteorologist Michael White, meteorologist Chastity Bird. I'm meteorologist Matt Barrington. We are all here. We are watching this for you. It is moving through Mobile. If you live in Mobile, you need to be taking shelter. We've been watching this one for a while. We saw it form around Theodore. It got hard to pick out for a little while.
Yeah.
It was going through a transformation.
I mean, you can even see you can actually see the hook on the velocity product on our radar.
Yeah,
I mean, that is textbook 101 on that.
Yeah, we're looking at a very dangerous situation, folks. The main thing you need to know, there's been a wedge tornado. It's on the ground in the city of Mobile. You need to be in
Live, this is One for the Record. I'm Diana, and today is December 26, 2012. It is Wednesday evening, and a whole bunch of updates for you today. I have attached videos from Pastor Paul Begley's channel, and Dutch Sense's channel. Also, the same thing is on JCATTERAS channel with more information on the solar flares. So, he has a whole bunch of links. And SHEILALIEN and Dutch Sense is the same video. And it has to do with the tornado touching down and solar flares. And I have everything attached for you guys so you don't miss out on anything. Here we go. Alright. The Extinction Protocol 2012 and beyond. Bangladesh slaughters 150,000 birds over avian flu. Heads up. Also, okay, nothing else new. Weather goes haywire over Europe. Scientists baffled by erratic swings of jet stream, and that was yesterday. I'm also attached. The tornado is from Christmas morning. I guess Christmas Day. well, I guess it looks like almost evening on the video, but it's on the 25th, and they posted it today, so I'm giving it to you as soon as I see it. Alrighty then. Moving on. The Watchers watching the world. Okay, we are sending more signals into space than we know, and we might not be the only ones in the universe listening in. Ooh, heads up. Also, plumes of dust by Lake Chad and Air Mountains, Chad and Niger. World's biggest, oldest trees are dying. Also, NASA plans to search for signs of life on Jupiter's moon, Europa. Oh, that's like in that movie 2010, I think, that movie. Okay, tracking the origins of HIV. Okay. Tropical storm Wukon Quinta transversing Camotes Island and approaching Philippines. Alrighty then. That's the Watchers watching the world. Next up. Stay tuned, because I'm leaving all the I'm going to attach a bunch of videos, so you're going to see a bunch of private things coming up. I apologize for that, but you're going to see it. I have to merge it all together. It's not done. So I'm uploading a bunch of stuff. Alright, here we go. E&E News, Energy News. Impermeable wall between leaking Fukushima reactors in ocean yet to be built. TEPCO still working on silt fence. Also today, Yomiuri. Alarming trend in Fukushima children, parents, radiation fears, and stress from disaster blamed for spike in obesity rates. Remember, your metabolism is controlled by your thyroid. And if they have a bunch of tumors going on, heads up! That's all I got to say. Alright. Lawsuit. Reactor itself meltdown. Not only nuclear fuel rods, Japan government lying through their teeth about meltdowns. Uh-oh, heads up. Also today, Navy rescue workers sue Japan over Fukushima cover-up. Irreparable harm to life expectancy. Government and TEPCO conspired. There you go. Okay, there you go. That's from today. Now, U.S. Canada. Let's see what's there. Okay, nothing new today, so forget it. Remember, I'll read what they put on the 24th. Company officials. Liquid oil is coming from bubbles in center of giant sinkhole. No cleanup crews working from December 22nd to 26th. So tomorrow we might find out something. Alrighty then. So, remember it's a short week. Today is Wednesday, hump day. So, it's 3 days down, 2 to go before the weekend. Take care and always be prepared for anything. And I'll attach as many videos as I can. Oh, take you down the rabbit hole. Let's see how far it goes. Here we go. Take care. Stay tuned and always be prepared. I'll see you on the flip side tomorrow. According to Pastor Paul Begley's channel, England prepares for zombie apocalypse. And here we go.
What's going on? Here's the Huffington Post this morning with an article from the United Kingdom, which doesn't surprise me. The title of this, again, Huffington Post article, The Zombie Apocalypse. Are you serious? And who would deal with it in England? Who's going to deal with it? Well, listen to this. The zombie apocalypse would be dealt with by the Cabinet Office, not the Ministry of Defense. Now, in the dead of the night, when the zombies come, you're only going to want to know one thing. who's in charge. And luckily, thanks to one member of the public, we know that in the event of a global zombie outrage, the Cabinet Office would be the government's first line of defense. A Freedom of Information request spotted by the Daily Telegraph has revealed that the Ministry of Defense would not be involved in the plans to combat any invasion by brain-eating zombies. The Cabinet Office would deal with the response to flesh-eating zombies. Instead of the Cabinet Office would coordinate emergency plannings for the zombie apocalypse to return England to its pre-attack glory. According to the Ministry of Defense, in the event of an apocalyptic event, i.e. zombies, any plans to rebuild and return England to its pre-attack glory would be led by the Cabinet's office, and thus any pre-planning activity would also be taking place there. The Ministry of Defense's role in any such event would be to provide military support to the civil authorities, not to take the lead. Consequently, the Ministry of Defense holds no information on this. The admission is not the first time an intrepid member of the public has questioned if the public authorities of England are ready for a zombie attack. What? I mean, people are really getting nervous. People are really freaking out over the zombie apocalypse.
There you go. Zombie apocalypse. He also, in his previous show today, talks about the RFID chip. I'll show you that too for a second there.
FID microchip in the Obamacare health care bill. It is there. For those of you who keep saying it's not, here's a video. It's in H.R. 4872 and H.R. 3590 in 7 different paragraphs. Now, this man right here, he doesn't want no part of this question. This is a town hall meeting that took place in Reston, Virginia. He does not want to answer the question this lady's going to ask about the microchip, the implantable microchip in the health care bill. Now, this video is from January of 2012, so don't get mad at me and tell me it's an old video. I know it's old. I understand that, but you know how many people don't know that the RFID microchip mandatory implantable device is in the health care bill? I don't know when they're going to implement it. It's supposed to be done by March 23rd, 2013, or no later than December 31st, 2017, or at the discretion of the Department of the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So anytime between now and December 31st, 2017. We'll see when it will take place. But here, watch Howard Dean, Dr. Howard Dean, who ran for President of the United States. Watch how he fumbles and bumbles and missteps and tries to get around this question. Here we go.
Lots of care for the people that were disadvantaged. I'm now a kindergarten teacher, so I'll be nice.
You don't have to be.
I wanted to ask you, friends of ours that live in France have a medical card, and there is a chip on it that has all of their medical information from birth to whatever age they are. That scared me, frankly, because I said to them, well, how do you want the government knowing all of your business from cradle to grave? I believe our country was founded on independence, and I think we can all agree on this, whether you're Democrat or Republican. I think it's important that we have privacy between our doctor and our health records, and it shouldn't be shared with the government.
Governor Dean?
And if you could tell me under what moral jurisdiction the Constitution allows you to do that.
First of all, since this is the last one, let me thank all of you on both sides. I happen to think, I think everybody actually behaved pretty well. This is kind of a spirited American tradition, and I appreciate it, and I thank you very, very much, all of you. Secondly, The interesting thing about this is one of the biggest problems in medicine was just raised in the last question. It's sort of like the psychiatry patient asking the really tough one on their way out the door so nobody can deal with it. This is a huge issue, and it's much more than about just this health care bill, because this isn't just about health care. You don't want the government knowing all your health information. You're not so crazy about having the insurance industry or your bank knowing all your information either, which then gets sent to all these credit card companies, and that's why you get all this junk mail. So this is a much bigger issue than health care, and health care is a pretty big issue. Here's what folks are struggling with, and I don't think this is one's cooked, and I'm going to give, of course, Jim the last word, but we want to have records that are complete, and patients get cared for better if the doctor who's taking care of them know that it's complete. And so the president put in a lot of money in the stimulus package to advance medical records, so that if you get sick in some place that's 1,000 miles from your home, you can get, if you have the chip, you can carry the records with you. They can stick it in the computer. They can know all your situations. If you get been in a terrible car accident and you can't tell them anything, you have the doctor has the information. They know if you're on some kind of medication, etc. That's important. So what guards are there against the privacy? And the guards are a bill that was passed about 6 or 8 years ago called HIPAA, which stands for God knows what, but it has something to do with health insurance and privacy. The problem is it's not enough. And there is no way it's enough. And this is a private sector problem as well as a government problem. Look, just the other day, there was some guy hacked into some credit card companies and stole 130 million credit card numbers. Those are our credit card information that's now in some crook's hands. So there is no really good answer to this, because in this information age, there's going to be, and there already is, more information available than most of us, at least in my generation, didn't grow up on Facebook, would ever be comfortable in having in other people's hands. On the other hand, the more information that your healthcare professionals have, the better it is. So the key is, how are we? And this is an open question, because I don't think anybody knows the right answer to this. How are we going to build a wall between, particularly the government, but also corporate America and ourselves, so that our private information stays private? But there are people who need to know our private information, and one of them is the healthcare professional that's taking care of us. So this is a great question, unfortunately, for which there is no perfect answer.
Heads up, heads up. Powerful filament eruption with CME solar flare. And this is from ELIAS FRAGAKIS, his channel. Check this out. This is from today. Wow, and you can see the time at the bottom with the date. Wow. Alrighty then.
It's December 23rd, 2012, and this is the Energy Education Podcast. I'm Kevin Hurley. Today on the show, we'll discuss 2 U.S. nuclear power plants that are operating beyond what they were originally designed for. We'll discuss the design bases of Nebraska's Fort Calhoun plant and how original calculations that went into designing the containment support structure are now known to be flawed. We'll also talk more about the San Onofre plant, what it was designed to handle, and what's actually happening. Joining us to discuss these issues is Fairwind's Chief Nuclear Engineer, Arnie Gunderson, all coming up next. Let's get right to it. The topic of today's show is plants operating beyond their design bases. We have 2 plants that we'd like to talk about, Fort Calhoun and San Onofre. Fort Calhoun is a nuclear plant in Nebraska that experienced severe flooding last year, and there was some concern about that. Arnie, you were talking about that at the time, but some new information may be raising some cause for concern. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, this is, Fort Calhoun has been shut down since April of 2011 because of the flood. And They were looking at what did the flood do to the structure, what did it do to the foundations. Well, as part of that process, they just discovered that there were problems inside the nuclear containment. And they just had a meeting with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission about those problems. But what's fascinating about it is that these problems that they just discovered aren't related to the flooding at all, and they go back decades.
So, Arnie, how long ago were these plants designed? How did they plan to meet these design bases? I mean, these plants are designed in the 60s and 70s, right?
Yeah, these plants were designed when I was in college and just out of college. And this particular one, Fort Calhoun, was designed with hand calculations and slide rules in the 1960s. Now, what they discovered as a result of trying to see the condition of the plant after the flood, well, they discovered that those calculations from the 60s had errors. Those calculations also some of them are missing, and then some of them are just plain incomplete. We're posting the slides on the site from the NRC presentation, and listeners might want to click on slide number 12. But Omaha Public Power District admits, here's the quote, that there were, quote, incorrect and incomplete or missing calculations. There were inconsistencies between the calculations and the drawings. There were incomplete consideration of all load combinations, and there were simple numerical errors. Well, I mean, what did they do right back in the 60s if they had all these problems? Omaha Public Power is trying to limit the scope of this to just look at these beams inside the containment. But my God, if they had all these kinds of problems that went undetected for 5 decades now, how many other nuclear calculations should be suspect? I hope the NRC is going to ask those kinds of questions.
So what we're actually looking at then are support structures in the containment, right?
Yeah, we're looking at the beams that hold things like the nuclear reactor up, or the steam generators and the pressurizer. They're major structural beams. And what they discovered is that in the normal day-to-day life of the power plant, they'll hold just fine. But if there's a pipe break, the stresses and the shaking of the system are such that those beams inside the containment are likely to fail. So, the people out in Omaha are certainly thankful that there wasn't a nuclear accident, because if there had been, it's likely the insides of the plant would have shaken to the point where the emergency core cooling wouldn't have worked.
So this is about being able to simply hold up the weight of the reactor in the case of an accident. Now, Arnie, the Omaha Public Power District is just now coming forward with this information. Are they just now learning about this?
Well, the reporters who were at the public hearing where this material was presented said that they've known about it for 2 decades. There's a great write-up by an organization called Simply Info that addresses the public hearing here. And I was dumbfounded. I mean, how can you know about incorrect, incomplete, missing calculations, numerical errors for 2 decades and not do anything about it? It speaks to the NRC oversight of these reactors. The NRC has resident inspectors on site. And the NRC will always say, well, we have our personnel on site at all times. But the fact of the matter is they only have 2 people, and there's another 700 at the utility. So the resident inspectors become just box checkers. They walk around and make sure that every I is dotted and every T is crossed. But they never go back and look at these big questions like, how was this plant designed, and are the calculations upon which it's based even accurate? So we're finding here at Fort Calhoun that the design bases for the plant, that all those hand calculations of a bunch of geeky engineers with slide rules back in the 60s are wrong, are missing, or just they didn't think the problem through fully. And yet, they're talking about starting back up in January.
So there's a problem with these old calculations at the Fort Calhoun plant. There's concern that the weight-bearing structures may not be able to hold up the containment in the event of a problem. What could that mean? I mean, does it just drop the containment?
Yeah, what it means is that had there been an accident, had a pipe break occurred, the extra forces on the plant, not just the dead load of these things just sitting there and operating, but the dynamic twists and turns of the plant as a pipe were to break, would likely have caused these things to fail. You know, they went back in and they started to look at different beams. And they said, well, let's look at these 6 beams and see if this is just a rare problem or is it systemic. And they looked at 6 and they found all 6 were wrong. So it's clearly an indication of a systemic problem. And yet, this is coming out of NRC Region 4, which is the part of the NRC that handles all the nuclear plants in the western part of the country. And yet, here's Region 4 not asking the big picture questions like, well, if these problems are true in this small little piece of information you're looking at, how can we be sure about all of the safety calculations you've done? I don't see those big picture questions being asked. The other big picture question is, you guys have known about this for 2 decades. Why didn't you tell us?
And when you say you guys have known about this, you're talking about the staff at Fort Calhoun or the NRC?
Yeah, the management at Fort Calhoun apparently has known about this problem for years, if not decades. And yet the NRC is just now being made aware of it. When in the nuclear industry, if an employee were to know about missing calculations or incomplete calculations or incorrect calculations and not tell immediately about these problems, they would be fired, and then the NRC has a process where they're banned from the nuclear industry for 5 years. I don't see the NRC even considering that for Fort Calhoun's management. If this happened to a person, that person's career would be destroyed, but yet here Fort Calhoun let it occur for likely several decades, according to Simply Info, and yet I don't see anybody at the NRC saying, why should we let you start back up in 2013 or even 2014 for that matter? How can we trust the management at Omaha Public Power?
So all of these, well, at least in this case, these old calculations, inaccuracies in these old calculations, missing information. Maybe the engineers put the dot in the wrong place or forgot to carry a 0. Whatever that is, do you suspect that that's limited to the Fort Calhoun plant only at this point?
Well, there's 2 parts to that. First off, I don't think it's just limited to the containment at Fort Calhoun. Within Fort Calhoun, if they've got these problems on the beams inside the containment, I can't imagine why they wouldn't have problems throughout all of the calculations. But we turned a blind eye to design bases issues at other plants. So within NRC Region 4, it's not just Fort Calhoun that they are deliberately giving a bye to. Here's Fort Calhoun, and they're saying, well, we'll seriously consider starting you guys up in January of 2013. We see the same behavior in NRC Region 4 on San Onofre.
All right, Arnie, I do want to talk about San Onofre. Before that, though, I just want to touch base with you about your fundraising goals. Fairwinds has a goal of $50,000. Where are we along the way?
We posted a fundraiser about a month ago trying to get enough money to move forward into 2013. And I'm really gratified by the results. We are 80% there. We thought we'd need about $50,000 to get through 2013. And so far, people have donated about $40,000. So we're really close to our goal. It's so gratifying to walk down to the mail and get small checks from many people who really care about the message of Fairwinds. And to those people who have sent, I really appreciate it. And in the last week here before the fiscal year ends, if you haven't sent, I urge you, please consider sending a donation on to Fairwinds.
So Arnie, moving on to San Onofre. Today we are talking about design basis issues. Tell me what's going on at San Onofre right now.
Well, if you're a frequent visitor to the Fairwinds site, you'll know there's about 4 reports up there for Friends of the Earth about problems at the steam generators at San Onofre. Just real quick, they replaced the steam generators, and in less than a year, they had multiple tube failures inside a steam generator. Steam generator is like a forest of little tubes, not much bigger than your finger, but they go 30 or 40 feet high, and they began to vibrate and damage each other.
So just to clarify, Arnie, the steam generator tubes are carrying very hot radioactive water through non-radioactive water so they can transfer the heat but contain the radiation. That's how it's working?
My God, Kevin, we're going to make an engineer out of you yet. Yeah.
I think you said that last week. Okay, go on. So what are the problems with these tubes?
Okay, so what happened in January of last year, the plant sprung a leak in one of these tubes, and they went back in and they did a pressure test, and 8 tubes failed the pressure test. Now, what that means is that had there been an accident, 8 of these tubes would have likely burst. And the plant's design basis, what it's designed for, is 1 tube bursting. So basically, the conditions inside the plant were 8 times worse than anybody ever expected. So had there been the accident, had there been this thing called the main steam line break accident, not 1 pipe, but at least 8 and possibly even many more. They did wind up ultimately plugging 1,300 tubes. So perhaps hundreds of tubes might have failed. But the important thing here, getting back to design bases and region NRC Region 4, the plant clearly was operating outside of its design bases. It was designed for 1 tube breaking, and in fact, at least 8 would have broken, if not more. Now, what that means is that all of the emergency planning structure would have been useless. We're talking about an accident that could have been 8 times worse than what the state of California is prepared to respond to. What can happen in the event of this accident is you might have to evacuate all the way out to Los Angeles and all the way down to the Mexican border. This was a big deal. When these tubes fail, they would leak about 5,000 gallons of water every minute out of the nuclear reactor into places where it never was designed to be. So you've got radioactive water leaving the nuclear containment and heading into places that aren't designed to retain it. But more importantly, the plant is not designed to make up 5,000 gallons of water into the nuclear core. So the nuclear core might not have been cooled and you might have had a meltdown. So this problem is, I think, the most significant near miss we've had in the last at least 10 years. And the NRC in Region 4 is ignoring the fact that San Onofre was operating well beyond what it was designed for. Now, here's what the NRC's position is on this. What the NRC in Region 4 is saying, well, yeah, we know 8 tubes or more would have broken, and we know it would have been a much worse accident than you can design for. But the chance of a mainstream steam line break was only about double. So because the probability didn't go up too much, we're going to give them a bye. We're going to say, okay, you weren't really acting outside of your design bases. If the NRC had determined that it was operating outside its design bases, they could levy a $150,000 a day fine for the 18 months that the plant was running. It could easily add up to $1 billion penalty. They don't want to go there.
So let me try to make this a little more understandable for me. These tubes are carrying radioactive water at very high pressures in order to transfer heat and run the turbines. They planned, what I'm understanding you say, is that 1 tube at the most could break. What you're telling me is that yes, there is the problem of this radioactive water leaking into a non-radioactive area, and that's one problem to deal with. But the main problem, if 8 tubes break as opposed to the 1 tube that they planned for, is too much water would be lost, and they wouldn't be able to make up for it and cool the reactor. Is that right?
That's it, exactly. None of the reactor simulators are designed to handle an accident where 8 tubes break. There's simply not enough water to inject back into the nuclear reactor as it's depressurizing in order to prevent the core from being covered, which means you're going to get tube failures. And likely, in the case of an 8-tube rupture accident, I can't see how a meltdown would have been, could have been averted. It's outside of what the plants are designed for, and it's outside of what the operators are trained to handle.
And these tubes are only about as big as a finger?
Yeah, they're only about as big around as your finger, and they're, of course, 30 or 40 feet high, and they have a U-tube on the top. We have a video on the website from back in the spring that we talk about what these tubes look like. And if somebody wanted to go back, they could go back and take a look at that video. So yeah, there's a forest of these tubes, more than 9,000 of these tubes in the steam generator, and they were beating each other up, hitting each other, to the point where 8 were ready to fail, and did fail when San Onofre ultimately did a pressure test that would have simulated what would have happened had there been a main steam line breakup.
So if 8 tubes can lose that much water, then the water traveling through these tubes must be under tremendous pressure.
Oh yeah, a couple thousand pounds per square inch.
So Arnie, how does all of this then affect the emergency planning around this sort of, a densely populated radius around this plant?
Yeah, there's 8 million people living within 50 miles of the plant. And right now the emergency plan only goes out to 10 miles. But 10 miles even includes Camp Pendleton, which is the largest Marine base in the world. 50,000 Marines are on that base at some times during the year. We need to think about what would be the ramifications to national security if we had to abandon Camp Pendleton. The plant itself sits right in the middle of Camp Pendleton, and because of that, should there have been an accident, then evacuation of 10,000 to 50,000 Marines would have been required with all their equipment left behind. It's from a national security standpoint, it's not something you'd want. And then if you just look up the road, you wind up in big cities like Irvine, California, and a little further north than that is LA. A little further south is San Diego. So huge cities that with 8 million people. But equally important, not more importantly, is that LA is the biggest port in the world for U.S. imports and exports. So if we had to shut down LA because of an accident at San Onofre, we would be effectively damaging the country, perhaps irrevocably. So the consequences of the design failures by Southern California Edison at the San Onofre plant are huge. And yet the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is like an ostrich in the sand. They're refusing to acknowledge that if a main steam line break happened, basically every one of the systems we put in place to protect the public would have failed.
That's a lot riding on a little pipe.
Yeah, it's a lot riding on a little pipe, and it's a lot riding on a little emergency plan.
Arnie, thanks for joining us again this week.
All right, Kevin, thanks for having me. In spite of this gloomy news, I hope you have a happy holiday, and I hope our viewers do too.
All right, you too. Well, that about does it for this week's edition of the Energy Education Podcast.
Never. I'll never turn to the dark side. You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi.